Who is Jerry Duncan? Well, he's part of the history of University of Alabama football.
He's almost like an archetype of the Bryant player of that era.
All we need is just somebody that wants to do some leadership out there. Now we go. Come on in.
It says, to one of our greatest, thanks for the memories, all there, Bryant.
I was at Alabama with all these great players, and some of them had 25 and 30 scholarship offers. I didn't have any.
Sometimes he just would take a gut instinct on a kid. And so that's what he did with Jerry Duncan. And they kept trying Jerry at different positions.
They'd have moved me from halfback to fullback to rover, tried at safety, and then when he moved me to tackle, he said, the next time I move you, it'll be back to Sparta, North Carolina.
He wouldn't go. And lo and behold, Jerry Duncan becomes the starting offensive tackle.
The fact that he maximized everything that he had in that undersized frame was a major part of what made him as successful as he was.
His want to, his desire, whatever you want to call it, was off the charts.
You know, in the spring, the I Love to Practice Award is named after Jerry Duncan. He was a leader. That's that key intangible that Jerry had.
It's time for University of Alabama football. Across the way along the Alabama sideline is our cohort, Jerry Duncan.
Someone who grew up in the 60s and 70s in Alabama, I listened to the radio broadcast, and Jerry joined the broadcast team as the very colorful sideline announcer.
I just left the Alabama dressing room over there. Let me tell you something. Those kids are excited about this thing.
Jerry represents great times in Alabama football history.
Hey, unbelievable!
When the listener knows you care as much as they do, fans relate to that. Jerry is in some ways who they are and also who they always wanted to be. The guy who got to play for the Bear.
Sparta sits right off the Blue Ridge Parkway. Little mountain town up in northwest North Carolina, right on the North Carolina-Virginia line. I mean, it's just magnificent and a great place to grow up. When you're up there, it's, you know, you're pretty isolated and there's not a lot of college coaches come to Sparta, North Carolina to see somebody play.
His senior year in tiny Sparta, North Carolina, he is the leading rusher in the state of North Carolina. The leading rusher. He didn't get a single Division I offer.
Really and truly, I was just trying to get a scholarship. My mother and father had never attended college, so I was the first generation. Tennessee told me I was too small. North Carolina State said my grades weren't good enough, and I would have probably walked on somewhere, but it would have probably been a Lenore-Rhine or an Appalachian State or something like that.
I love the story of how Jerry Duncan got to Tuscaloosa. It's such a Bryant story. He's almost like an archetype of the Bryant player of that era.
My high school coach, my senior year, he went to a coaching clinic in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Coach Bryant was the keynote speaker. And I don't know how it happened. I don't know whether there was alcohol involved. I don't know what.
And he starts selling Coach Bryant, oh, I've got this kid. You know, he's not real big, he's not real fast, but he will never quit on you.
When my high school coach got back to Sparta, called me up and said, I think you're going to hear from Alabama. About, I don't know, a week later, I got a call from Coach Bryant and said, I'm interested in signing you and I'm going to send somebody up there. The only thing I want you to do is just don't commit to me that you won't sign with any other Southeastern Conference school. And I think to myself, well, I'll promise you I won't sign with another Southeastern Conference school because I hadn't been offered anything.
And he tells one of his assistants who had responsibility for North Carolina, Clem Griska, to go to Sparta, North Carolina, which I think took about 3 days to get there. It was so far up in the hills, and sign this kid.
About a week later, Coach Griska pulled up and he said, this is just very unusual that this is happening because we've never seen you play.
Griska looks across the table at Jerry and says, you know, got any film we could look at? And Jerry gets this devilish grin on his face. He says, shoot, we don't even have a camera.
And here's a letter from University of Alabama, from Coach Bryant, and they addressed it, Mr. Jerry Duncan, Sparta, North Carolina. No post office box, no street address, and no zip code. So,
how aware were you of the Alabama football program?
Not a thing. I didn't know. The furthest south I'd ever been was Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And so all of a sudden, this guy from Alabama shows up, and I didn't, but I do remember that national championship ring. And I said, I sure would like to have one of those. And he said, well, they're not easy to get, but if you come to Alabama and you work hard, you've got a chance. And then after I got there, I realized the price you got to pay to get one of those rings.
It's close.
The practices were so unbelievably tough that, and you just think, I don't know if I can make another step. Everybody wants to know, well, did he stay on the tower all the time, or was he down on the field? All I can say is when I was playing for him, you wanted him to be on the tower. You did not want him down on the field, because when he came off that tower, something was wrong. He had seen something that he didn't like, and he was going to get it corrected. If he started coming toward your drill, you better get ready, because somebody had done something wrong. Practicing 115-degree weather with no water breaks, you'd line up on the 50-yard line, and the managers and the trainers would come down and they'd give you a piece of ice and a salt tablet. That was it.
It was not a game so much about skill in those days as it was about will. Several things you have to understand about that era of Alabama football. There were no scholarship limitations. So Bryant could sign as many kids as he wanted, and if he didn't like you, he ran you off. Sometimes he just would take a gut instinct on a kid. And so that's what he did with Jerry Duncan.
I was 165 pounds, probably 5'10", 5'11", and we had 3 freshman games. And I remember Coach Bryant telling me one time, he said, Duncan, if I had seen you on film, you wouldn't be here.
Bryant was a master psychologist. And he also knew how to move the chess pieces around the board better than any coach who ever lived. They kept trying Jerry at different positions.
Coach Stallings told me, I've been watching you, he said, I think maybe you might be able to be a safety. So we go to the stadium to practice, and Joe Namath threw 2 touchdown passes over my head. And I go to practice the next day, and the depth chart was up there, and my name wasn't listed on the chart. About that time, Coach Stallings walked up to me, and he said, do you know what Coach Bryant said to me in the staff meeting this morning? I said, no, sir. Coach Bryant called Coach Stallings Beebs. He said, Beebs, you must have been stone drunk when you thought Duncan could play safety. He said, your safety career's over, son. I put on a few pounds, so they moved me to fullback. I was competing against Jackie Sherrill, Les Kelly, and Steve Bowman. And all 3 of them were great players, so it didn't take me long to figure out I was not going to be playing much at fullback. So spring of '65, he moved me to guard. And then we had a tackle that got hurt, so he moved me over to tackle.
When Jerry got thrown to offensive tackle, that basically was Bryant throwing him away. If you can't survive here, you're not going to make it. But here's the thing about Jerry Duncan. They tried to run him off. He wouldn't go.
He hollered at me and he said, come over here, Duncan. And so he said, now listen, he said, I'm going to move you to tackle today. And he said, I want you to go down there and see Coach Snellenberger and tell him that I'm his responsibility. So I turned around and I start down to where Coach Snellenberger was. So he stopped me and he said, Duncan, the next time I move you, it'll be back to Sparta, North Carolina.
I think Coach Snellenberger at first thought, what have you given me, Coach Bryant? That's at least what Jerry will tell you. I
said, Coach, I think Coach Bryant's trying to run me off. He said, let me tell you something. I'm going to try to save both of us. For a long period of time, Coach Snellenberger lived with me. He brought film to the dorm. We watched film after practice. We did everything together. And he was one of those people, it had to be perfect.
He taught him the legendary Bama block at that point. They were able to hit way down low and use leverage and all this stuff that was all about overpowering those usually larger defensive linemen. He made Jerry Duncan a football player. He made him an offensive tackle.
I was just so fortunate that I had Coach Snellenberger, never gave up on me, and worked my butt off, and I didn't have to move back to Sparta, North Carolina. I didn't have to go back to Sparta, North Carolina. When I reported back in September, you had to make a mile run in a certain amount of time, 6 minutes, and starting tackle did not make the mile. And Coach Bryant would not issue a uniform to anybody that didn't make the mile. So the second team tackles moves up to first, I move up to second, and he got season-ending knee injury after about the first or second practice we had. So all of a sudden, I'm the starting tackle at Alabama, and I'm scared to death.
Coach Bryant was not a great offensive innovator, but he was a stickler about reading through the rule book. Man, he read that rule book backwards and forwards. He knew every little nook and cranny in the rule book. And he discovered the tackle eligible at some point early in his career.
And here is the tackle eligible. I can't believe that this is in here like this, but I can assure you that these two defensive backs out here are not worried about the tackle. That would normally be Dennis Holman over here and Perkins here, and both of them could outrun the wind. And then all I got to do is slide out of the backfield, and there's where the quarterback throws the ball, tackle eligible. And I'm off and running.
So the tackle eligible really was Paul Bryant's way of getting in the heads of his opponents. So it became a big part of his bag of tricks at Alabama in the 60s.
I think Coach Bryant and Coach Smellenberger probably sit down and talked about this because, see, since I had been a halfback, I had a decent amount of speed. I mean, I wasn't going to outrun Ray Perkins or Dennis Holman, but I was decently fast, I guess is a good way to put it.
He had the right tools to be able to pull it off. And it was all about deception and the right quarterback and the right tackle. But Jerry became this personification of the tackle eligible.
Here's a throwback to the tackle, Jerry Duncan.
Oh, this is the Sugar Bowl. This is the Sugar. This is where I almost dropped it. Watch this right here.
Hey, get in there with him, Jerry Duncan. Don't you fumble. Oh, he'll die if he fumbles that ball. Nobody rather run the football than Jerry Duncan, and he's a great one.
I love that voice. Here it is again. This is the first play of the Orange Bowl. Okay, and I'm out here wide open. Now look, I could have scored. See, I slipped down on the daggone turf right there. So this is a touchdown. This is against Mississippi State here. See, there's nobody out there. All I had to do was get by one guy. So it was a picnic, and yeah, that was touchdown. That played in Tuscaloosa. This is Ole Miss laying in Jackson. We ran this play 2 or 3 times just to make Johnny Vault mad. We could have run it all day long and gained yardage every time.
You know, in 1965, the tackle eligible and Jerry Duncan played a big role in Alabama coming from behind against Ole Miss to win one of the biggest come-from-behind victories in Alabama history, because without it, Alabama doesn't win the '65 national championship. And he ran it time and again against Ole Miss. And Johnny Vault hated the tackle eligible, hated it.
The Southeastern Conference has a rules committee, and I don't know how many people are on the rules committee, but I know Johnny Vault was on the rules committee.
I've spoken to at least 2 guys years ago who were on that rules committee with Johnny Vault. He said, "We're not leaving the room until we get rid of that blankety-blank tackle eligible." The NCAA rules committee did get rid of it in the late 60s, and Johnny Vault had been embarrassed. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
It was really a good play, and Coach Bryant just absolutely loved it. Because he said, "I got him again. I got him again." You know. There's Jerry Duncan, the greatest coach of all time.
I think Jerry's most well-known trait and characteristic as a player was the toughness that especially came from somebody who didn't fit the mold.
He became one of the most beloved players of that era. The old adage, half of life is showing up. Jerry Duncan showed up, and he did everything that was asked of him.
Went to graduate school after I finished playing, and was a graduate assistant for Coach Bryant. It was after some operations that I had to go through on my feet. It was pretty much decided that I was not going to ever be a football coach. And so John Forney called me and said, "We're thinking about putting a third man on the sideline." I said, "Have you talked to Coach Bryant about this?" He said, "No." I said, I'm not I'm not touching the sidelines as a sideline reporter until Coach Bryant knows about this.
Well, Jerry's reputation is what allowed him to be on the sidelines. Everybody knew Jerry. Everybody loved Jerry. And the fact that he did have that connection with Coach Bryant.
He spoke it not just from the perspective of a player, by golly, one of Coach Bryant's players, a guy that was as plugged in as anybody. I grew up in Fairfield, and when you ask about my first memory of listening to the Alabama Football Radio Network, it was John, Jerry, and Doug.
It's time for University of Alabama football. This is Doug Layton, along with John Forney. Across the way along the Alabama sideline is our cohort, Jerry Duncan, who has been on this stadium both as a broadcaster, as a spectator, and as a player.
It was really special for me those years I had with Coach Bryant. And then, of course, Ray and I were teammates for years, so that was kind of a natural there. And then Bill Curry was extremely nice to me, and Coach Stallings.
Well, where do we go to now, Jerry? We need to check your eligibility. I know you've never played defensive end, but it may be your chance.
I don't know about that, Doug. I don't really know how to even respond to that. In a game of men like this and the boys that I played with, I don't think we'd have much of a chance.
I leaned on him heavily, as I did on Doug, because they had a history. They knew the ins and outs of Alabama football. I was the new guy.
Jerry was almost like a second color man because of the way he spoke and the kind of passion that he brought to the broadcast that was a little different than Forney. There was something that you just felt like, okay, you know, Jerry is telling me the way it really is on the sideline.
Oh, I tell you, it's a spectacle. I wish everybody could be down here where I am, because it's just a great matchup. And if you look at this thing on paper, we're supposed to get the hell beat out of us today. So
I'm sure Jerry still felt like a player when he was on the sidelines. You know, we worked with Damian Square last year, Christian Miller in recent years as well. Those are Alabama football players in their heart first and foremost, and when they're standing on the sidelines, it only goes to another level.
You know, we'd pitch it down to Jerry for a comment from the sidelines, and he would say, "Eli," he said, I'm just too nervous. I can't say anything. Well, what good does that do you on the radio? That was just Jerry, though, and that's stuff like that endeared him to the listeners, because they too were sitting in their homes and nervous as heck.
Jerry, how the heck don't you have any gray hairs watching this, my friend?
I don't know if I've got any hair left or not, Eli.
My most memorable was the trip to Penn State in 1989. We had made some adjustments on the post-game show where Doug would do some of the locker room work, and Jerry would come up and join me in the press box. Late in the fourth quarter, the Nittany Lions kept handing the ball off to Blair Thomas. We couldn't stop him. He gets the ball and is tackled at about the half-yard line. Coach Paterno called timeout. We knew their kicker was going to come in and kick literally a chip shot field goal. And we were kind of resigned to the fact that, you know, with that kick, Penn State was going to beat Alabama as time expired.
13 seconds remain in the ball game.
All right, Eli, we're going to block it.
This is Penn State.
If you ever blocked one, you got to block this one.
The snap is good. The spot is good.
Well, Jerry fell backwards, and he lands in my lap.
And now you know that the Lord does wear crimson and white. I just found that one out here this afternoon.
That's the first time I've gotten to hug you yet, too, Eli.
Jerry Duncan jumped out of his seat, landed in my lap. Oh!
Yeah, I think I actually kissed him too.
Now picture this. I'm looking at the field. He's on my lap looking at me. And he says, "We blocked it." And he gave me a big kiss right on the lips. I don't know if I say I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the game. I don't know if he wasn't much of a kisser, but it's all right.
I'll tell you something, Jerry Duncan, standing down there on the field as you are, the sound waves, you can literally feel them just cascading off the crowd here in Knoxville.
I tell you, these Tennessee people have been looking forward to this game all the way since last year, Eli. I hope they don't have any surprises up their sleeve. We'll find out. Old Smokey just came out, Doug. I'll give him a kiss for you.
Thank you. Smokey and I have had this long-running relationship.
Yeah, old Smokey. Doug Layton and I talked about that. That dog that they got, they drag around out there in 115 degrees heat. He can't hardly walk.
It was a very dramatic. There's the regal old mascot of the Tennessee Volunteers, beautiful blue tick hound, old Smokey. If I had a 40-aught, I could drop him from here.
There was no question that Jerry and Doug just had a terrible dislike for Tennessee.
Busy one, have you already spotted Smokey down there anywhere? Yeah, I see Smokey. I think this is a new one. This one's kind of skinny. They hadn't fed him up. Hadn't fattened him up too much. I know, that's a good omen, Jerry. Yeah, that's right. Maybe they've been having to play Smokey. I don't know.
There were games after Jerry had retired, and if the Tide won, we had arranged that on the post-game show, we would call and he would answer the phone and he would start singing his version of Rocky Top. It had become a regular yearly tradition.
The clock is winding to 0. Alabama is back on top at Rocky Top, and now to sing us out, here is Jerry Duncan. Jer?
Wish that I was on old Rocky Top down in the Tennessee hills. Ain't no fog or smoke on Rocky Top, ain't no telephone bills. Rocky Top, you'll always be.
Lord have mercy. What do y'all come up with this stuff?
Rocky Top, Tennessee. Congratulations, Alabama.
There was never any question that Jerry was living and dying on every play, just like we are. I was even fortunate enough to be that sideline guy for several years. When the listener knows you care as much as they do, I think it resonates. And they see some of themselves in him because he wasn't the biggest, the fastest, the strongest.
The bottom line here is that Jerry was a guy who was not defined by his physical skills. If you connect the dots back to Clem Griska wanting to see film back before he signed him, Jerry Duncan was a guy who had assets that could not be captured on film. His want to, his desire, whatever you want to call it, was off the charts. And, you know, Coach Bryant always used to say that if your great player plays to 85% of his ability, and my average player plays to 110% of his ability, I can beat you. And Jerry Duncan personified that.
When you think back on my career, it's just, I'm just so lucky and so fortunate that things fell in place like they did. I don't know where I would be today if it weren't for Paul Bryant and the University of Alabama. I mean, you know, I had a lot of lucky breaks along the way, and coming from the little mountain town, and just had, you know, just very fortunate, you know. But Coach Bryant was, he was special, and he always will be. I just feel like I was at the right place at the right time and had the opportunity to be with some great teammates. And all of us wanted the same thing. We wanted to show Coach Bryant that we could play for him. And we might not have weighed about 175 or 185 or 190 pounds, but we wanted to prove to him that we could play, and we did. And the record stands for itself.
You need support? Download the free Connect Alabama app today. Your connection to care.